Good afternoon, Americans for the Arts. How y'all doing? Brother Mayor, thank you so much for your support. Michelle Boone, you are hilarious. That was so good. I feel fortunate to be a part of the Blues Sisters, Brothers. So cool, the brother-sister team of the Blues. I'm delighted to be here. It's amazing to see so many people who believe in the arts in one place, who in our local cities, in our states, and federal departments are part of the way in which art happens because of policy and because of strategy, because of self-organizing. We make cool things happen. And I think we do this because we believe not only in art, but we believe in artists. And so I want to say to all of the artists in the room, we salute you. So a couple of things kind of came out today that I found really interesting. And I wanted to just kind of reframe them, talk really casually for a couple minutes, and then maybe we can all have a kind of public conversation. But one of the things that struck me with this question of power is that there are lots of different ways of thinking about how power works. And today, I feel like I'm always talking about the role that artists play, and so there's a kind of individual power, and then this idea of maybe institutional power, the stuff that we can do between governments and the stuff that we do in our not-for-profit organizations. And then I just thought I'd talk a little bit about collective power, like the power that two neighbors have in order to do something, or what happens when individual artists create artist collectives and collaboratives, like the work that happens that is emergent, that is not dependent upon the creation of a new corporation, but what happens when great minds put their heads together. And so I thought I'd just kind of think about those things as a subtext to the set of things that I'd like to talk about today. As an individual artist, I'm always looking for ways in which the impact that I want to make in the world, whether it's through an object or through a space or in a museum, how to make that work bigger than myself. And so there I was with this kind of fictitious hope, a way of imagining the world bigger than myself, more than my individual need, looking at ways in which the individual object in my studio, in a place of exhibition, how that thing might go out and say other things in addition to clay. I'm here today to talk about the power of two, and how when we think about these materials that are normally some of the lowest materials made by some of the lowest labor in our country, that these materials in fact could have this other life, another kind of self, an elevated self. And that these things from our everyday that seem unexpectedly boring or ordinary, in fact, could be the symbols by which we start to reimagine the world. And so I found myself then taking my interest in clay and my interest in tar, my interest in the histories that materials carry with them, the kind of host effect that is in materials, the kind of animism that is waiting to be woken up. Like, how do I take these things that are just dormant in nature and kind of bring those things forward? Art has this capacity to free us from the everyday, free us from our shirts and ties, no matter how wide the collar. That in fact, sometimes I want to be more like Sun Ra. I want to imagine that my problem isn't a problem or a care on this earth, but in fact I have bigger, larger astral problems. I have new worlds to see. I have ways of imagining the world that are absolutely different from anything anybody could tell me. And so, because of Bootsy and Sun Ra, I imagine that the South Side is actually not a desolate place. It is a rich it's a gold mine, a diamond mine of untapped potential that simply needs to be dusted off a little bit, simply needs to be a little bit washed and a little bit like put in the right context and then given some light and some shimmer. So I want to look at Bootsy again because he is the light. Bootsy is the shimmer. That over and over again, we find artists attempting to be their best self by leaving themselves, by trying to be bigger than themselves. That part of the reason that we do the work that we do is because we believe not only in ourselves as individual artists, but we believe that there's a power that can only come through organizing, a power that comes through seeing the complexities that our fellow humans have and saying, you know, this isn't fair over here. This needs to be evidenced. Our governments need to see the value of what happens when we take resources away from kids in schools and kids in poor communities. And I feel like Basquiat was doing that work, kind of putting in front of us a kind of mirror of the challenges of this moment with the hope of simply making art. That in some ways, I'm always needing art to help me stay sane, help keep me on this ground, keep me stable, and get me out of here. That the solutions that we need for some of the challenges of our cities and rural neighborhoods, rural environments, are problems that can only be solved if we get a little bit out, if we get a little bit Sun Ra about it, a little bit Bootsy. That in some ways, this moment with the amazing amount of creativity that's starting to be invested in film, I'm thinking that it's allowing artists and creatives to kind of show this America in ways that we've never shown it before. So kind of some of the complexities of the history of our country. Steve McQueen is asking that we look at it like Lorna, a little bit closer. Like you may have to get a little bit closer to Lorna's work and then like move a little bit further back from Steve McQueen's. And so I've taken up my tie today like the yes men. I don't look like an artist today. I want to look like a bureaucrat. I want to like sit by the door and ask new kinds of questions. Questions like, how can more of the resources that we think about impact the communities that I live and work in, right? I want to think about the ways in which artists engage the social and the political to make new kinds of questions emerge in public dialogue. Tanya Bruguera in Cuba, a place called Displacement, where she, for me, makes herself into an Nkandi or an Nkisi doll, the effigy that allows for people to imagine a contract, that if two people have a disagreement, that they could kind of resolve that agreement at the tree, at the nail, at this thing, and that this object, this idol, this seemingly impotent object is in fact the keeper of deeds. And are we, in our pacts, in our democracy, in our Constitution, are we keeping our contracts? Are we allowing everybody in this country to benefit from the things that our Constitution said it would offer? So now, not just the buildings, but also really giving some thought to like the who, you know? That a lot of times people are kind of asking me questions about like, well, how'd you do it? And I think the how becomes easy when you have clear vision about who you want to benefit and like why these things are important. And I'm personally convinced, and maybe I'm a little bit crazy, but personally convinced that my practice as an individual artist, my affiliation with the University of Chicago, my affiliations with governments around the country, that all of it is trying to do one big work, which is to ask, can we be both inside and outside of our governmental jobs? Can we be inside and outside of the studio? Can we imagine that things that are happening inside our homes are important as well as the things that are happening outside of our homes? And that this kind of dialectic of kind of the internal and external, a way of imagining that my commitment is not only to myself, but there's something like outside of myself that is also important. It is now kind of governing me. And what I'm finding is that I'm never lonely. Thank you.